I'm Jay, welcome to the channel, and today we're going to be installing a set of Oxford hop grips on our KTM 390. So if you've been keeping an eye on the channel, you know that we've just got a KTM 390 adventure to do a little bit of overlanding on two wheels. To make this a little bit more comfortable, we've decided our first mod is going to be a set of heated grips. Now there isn't any bog standard KTM power part heated grips for this like there is for the 690, 790 and above. Yes, anyway, so our only choice really was the Oxford hop grips. I'm not going to do a review here, there's plenty of videos out there, and I might do one a little bit later on once I've actually got to use them a bit more. But couldn't find much information about how to install them on the KTM 390 Adventure, so I thought I'd show you how I did it. So here we go. Okay, so first we need to get access to the battery. We can do this by putting the key in the lock at the side of the bike and lifting the rear, and then the front seat. At this point I like to test to see if they're working. The worst case scenario is you glue these grips on and find out they're actually not working, they're faulty from the factory. So I quickly just stuck them onto the battery terminals, stuck the fuse in and manually activated them and see if they warmed up. So there's a few things we need to remove to fit these grips. First thing being the bar end stop, which undoes by an Allen key. This also removes the handguard. We also need to undo these two bolts which grip the other side of the handguard onto the bike. I believe it was a 8mm for one side of the bolt and then the nut was a 10mm. Don't have to do this, but I found it a bit easier with the mirrors out of the way, so I just twisted them clockwise for this one, I believe it's counterclockwise for the other side, and removed them out of the way. Now we need to start cutting the original grips off. Ideally you'd have something a bit better than just a Stanley blade, but that's all I had lying around the garage at the time. I just made a small slit in the end and then peeled it back, mainly because I wanted to double check that these grips are actually going to fit. So at this point I could probably put the grips back on if they weren't going to fit, but just enough space to get my calipers in there and double check. Looks like they're going to need a little bit of shaving down. The hot grips are a 25mm diameter and these are about just over 26 with some barbs and stuff, so we'll have to shave them down. But I'm quite confident we can do that, so we can carry on taking the grips off. Need to remove these little barbs on the end, which the original grips seem to use as a kind of a grip to stop them from sliding off, rotating. Now this ABS, well I'm assuming it's ABS plastic, some kind of brittle plastic anyway, is relatively easy to work with. So I've seen people use angle grinders and die grinders and stuff, but I found just using a hacksaw seems to be easier and a bit more accessible for most people. Just being careful to keep the blade as flat as possible so you don't cut into the grip, and just work your way around until you've cut the lug off. Repeat for all four. At this point I realised I don't really need the hacksaw frame, so I just found it a lot easier actually just to use the actual hacksaw blade itself. Might be easier for you, might not be. Give it a go. Once I cut them off, I had to think about how I'm going to do this, and I tried a bit of 60 grit sandpaper. And again, like I said, this ABS-y type plastic seems to sand pretty well as well, so I carried on and found out that 60 grip works pretty well. Managed to find myself a nice strip with a square edge, which will come in handy later. And just using this kind of wrap around up and down motion, it seems to, sand it off quite uniformly. So you keep that round shape. And it didn't take me that long to actually work my way up the throttle body. Maybe, I don't know, 15-20 minutes to do half of it. And I just used the grip and test fitted it every now and again just to see how well it was going. Probably took me around about half an hour to 45 minutes, slowly working my way up, and it got a nice fit. Still tight, but I could still be able to pull it back off again. I was originally thinking about leaving these lugs on. However, I was a bit concerned that the grip wasn't actually far enough onto the bar yet. So using a junior hacksaw, I cut most of the way through to avoid damaging anything on the switch body there, and then snapped the lug off. Now for sanding, I decided to put a little bit of tape on the switch body there. Should have probably done this before using the junior hacksaw, but either way, sanding, I wasn't going to take the chance of scratching the body up. So using that square edge I was talking about before on the strip, I worked as close as I can to the switch body and just reduced that last little bit down until I got a nice tight fit on the grip all the way up. As you can see, it's a little bit closer to the switch body and probably looks a little bit neater now as well. And it doesn't foul or rub on any surface which might cause a throttle jam. So we've got plenty of clearance on both sides. Now I'm just loosely fitting the handguard back again just to check that there is clearance on both sides and we're not going to have any kind of sticking throttle issues. That the throttles can self-return quite easily and there's no resistance when you're actually trying to open the throttle. I think I've gone with the touring grips here because they seem to be the perfect length. You could probably step up to the adventure grips, but it probably will require a little bit of trimming. So now all we need to do is repeat for the other side. This side's a little bit easier because there's no trimming of the bar required. Just cut the grip off and find the perfect position for the wiring. When trying to find a position, make sure your clutch lever does not hit the wiring connector there. And that's a nice position that you're going to get full clutch movement. Once you've found that, I found it was just easier to mark it with a piece of tape, so I knew exactly where it was when it come to glue the grips. Before gluing this side, I've just wiped it dry of any water that was on the bike at the time, and then using some pre-wiped degreaser, just getting rid of any oil residue from my hands or any other place, and then wiping that dry. Then applying a little bit of super glue just on the leading edge there. Just slide them up the bar and line up your marks. Now we can leave that to set. Just double checking your clearances. Now we need to do the same on the other side. This side's a little bit more difficult because you've obviously got the action of the throttle twisting, so you need to make sure you've got plenty of brake pressure, both at full and idle throttle position. And once you're happy with the position, it's not going to foul that lever, mark it again. Again, we're just going to wipe it with a little bit of degreaser, making sure to wipe it dry. And then applying a fair amount of super glue on this, because there's a twisting action going on here, you don't want this one to slip. So I put a little bit more super glue on this side than I did the other side. And then push on, making sure you've got your clearance between the switch body and the grip so you don't get fouling and that your lines match up. Again, at this point I'll just double check your clearances before the glue sets to make any fine adjustments. While you're waiting for the glue to set, you need to start thinking about mounting the controller. Ideally it needs to be somewhere close so you can reach it while you're riding. I've chosen the left hand side, I think most people would, so you can still keep your hand on the throttle. The metal bracket they provided isn't going to work where I want the controller. So instead I've used a 3D printed one that I printed at home. I found this design on the internet. It's a simple cable tie through the loop and then the controller screws onto the back. I'll probably design a better one at a later date, but this will do for the time being. Now you need to route the cables. This was going to be different from bike to bike, but from the 390 Adventure I found if you just follow the handlebars down and then follow the original wiring loom down between the forks and then back towards the tank, that seems to be a relatively neat route. When you're routing these cables, ensure you've got clearance from side to side with the swing of the handlebars. You don't want any cables being pinched or becoming tight when you're at full lock, restricting it. As for the power cable, it goes straight into the terminals as before. I've just took the fuse block underneath that rubber strap, and the cable goes just alongside the little air box there, down in between the panel to the underside of the tube of the frame, and then along just underneath the panel, following the original wire loom towards the forks. Now it's time for a test. I'm just going to start the bike for the first time to make sure I've got plenty of power in the battery to run these, and then to activate them I just need to press the plus button. It will start on 100% to warm them up as quickly as possible, so within 30 seconds or so you should start feeling the heat through the grips. Once you're happy with that, it's time to just throw everything back together. So that's been the install of the Oxford heated grips on a KTM 390 Adventure. Hope that's answered a couple of questions for you guys. If you'd like, subscribe, comment below if you have any questions, and until then, I shall see you later.